There are moments in a life that feel ordinary on the surface, yet quietly irreversible beneath. Moments where nothing dramatic happens, no doors slam shut, no lights flash across the sky, and yet something inside you knows, this is not the same world you were in before. You may have arrived here without certainty, perhaps only with a strange pull, a subtle pressure in your chest, or a fatigue that no amount of rest seems to touch. That feeling is not confusion. It is recognition. You are standing at a threshold, not a threshold marked by success or failure, but one defined by internal shift, the kind that does not announce itself loudly because it does not need permission. It arrives when the long season of effort has run its course, when seeking has exhausted itself, when the mind, after trying every angle, finally falls quiet enough for something deeper to speak. Most people miss this moment. They mistake it for stagnation. They label it burnout, doubt, or loss of motivation. But thresholds rarely feel like breakthroughs. They feel like stillness after struggle, like standing in the quiet just before a storm breaks, or the silence that settles right before dawn. The old momentum has slowed. The familiar narratives no longer grip you. What once drove you now feels strangely hollow. This is not collapse. It is suspension. A pause in which the old identity can no longer carry you forward, and the new one has not yet fully formed. The world may look unchanged, but your relationship to it is shifting. You are no longer pushing against reality. You are no longer chasing signs. Something in you is listening instead. And that is why you are here. Not to learn something new, but to recognize what has already been set in motion. Not to fix yourself, but to notice that the work you thought was unfinished may already be complete. This threshold does not ask for effort. It asks for awareness. It asks you to stay present long enough to feel what is happening beneath the noise. Because once you cross it, you don't go back. You don't return to the person who was waiting. The hidden mechanism. What if nothing in your life has been random? Not the delays, not the detours, not even the moments that felt like quiet defeat. What if every experience was part of an unseen mechanism, one that does not respond to desire or desperation, but to alignment? Most people are taught to believe that life opens through effort alone. Push harder, want it more, try again. But beneath the visible world of actions and outcomes, there is a subtler architecture at work. A system that does not move when you demand, but when the internal conditions are precise. Like a lock that turns only when every internal tumbler is perfectly aligned. Every challenge you faced was not an obstacle in the way. It was a calibration point. Each disappointment refined something in you. Your values, your boundaries, your perception of self. The heartbreak stripped away false attachments. The failures dissolved identities that could not follow you forward. Even the long periods of waiting were not empty time. They were moments where pressure was being applied quietly, shaping you from the inside. This is why progress often feels invisible right until it isn't. The mechanism does not reveal itself gradually. It remains hidden, gathering coherence. From the outside, nothing seems to move. From the inside, everything is rearranging, and you may have noticed this already. The way old goals stopped motivating you. The way certain relationships no longer fit, even if nothing went wrong. The way your tolerance for noise, conflict, or distraction quietly vanished. These are not signs of loss. They are signs that the internal alignment is nearing completion. The hidden mechanism does not reward intensity. It responds to consistency, to the repeated choice to be honest when it was uncomfortable, to the decision to let go when holding on felt safer, to the moments you chose integrity over approval even when no one noticed. Now the system is nearly silent. That silence is not emptiness, it is readiness. When the final alignment settles into place, nothing needs to be forced. The mechanism does not explode into motion. It simply clicks, and everything begins to move on its own. The science of the shift. There is a reason this moment feels different, and it has less to do with belief than with physics. In nature, change does not always arrive gradually. Sometimes it waits, it accumulates, it holds potential in a stable form until a precise threshold is crossed. Then, without warning, the system reorganizes itself entirely. This is known as a phase transition. Water does not slowly negotiate with ice. It remains liquid until a critical point is reached, and then its structure rearranges all at once. Molecules that were once free suddenly lock into a new order. The transformation looks instantaneous, but the preparation was happening long before it became visible. Human consciousness behaves the same way. For most of your life, your energy was scattered across competing signals. Desire pulled you forward, fear pulled you back, hope surged, doubt cancelled it out. At that level, nothing stabilizes. No single trajectory becomes dominant enough to collapse into reality. But over time, something changed. Your attention narrowed. Your inner signals became more coherent. You began repeating the same internal choice again and again, even when results didn't immediately follow. From a scientific perspective, coherence is power. When a system reaches coherence, its internal signals reinforce rather than interfere. In quantum physics, a coherent wave does not dissipate, it amplifies. And when amplification reaches a critical mass, the system can no longer remain in potential. Observation collapses it into form. This is the observer effect, not as philosophy, but as function. The shift you're approaching is not caused by effort in the present moment. It is the delayed consequence of sustained focus in the past. Your nervous system, your emotional field, your attention, all have been broadcasting the same signal long enough that alternative outcomes have lost momentum. That is why things feel irreversible now. Once a dominant pattern takes hold, competing patterns dissolve. The old way of being loses structural support. The mind senses this before circumstances reflect it, which is why you may feel both anticipation and unease at the same time. The system is changing state, and once that happens, returning to the previous form is no longer an option. The emotional signal. If the shift were purely intellectual, it would be easy. But transformation announces itself through the body first, through emotion, through sensations that don't always make logical sense. This is why, at the edge of real change, people rarely feel confident. They feel tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, but a deeper fatigue. The exhaustion of having carried a life that no longer fits. You may notice that the old strategies don't energize you anymore. Pushing harder feels pointless. Motivational words slide past without traction. Even hope, once so powerful, now feels thin. This emotional flattening is not loss of drive. It is the nervous system disengaging from an outdated pattern. For a long time, your system was running on tension. Desire created strain. Fear created pressure. The constant oscillation kept you moving, but it also kept you locked in effort. As the internal alignment completes, that tension begins to dissolve, and when tension dissolves, the mind often misinterprets it as emptiness. But emptiness is not the signal. The signal is relief mixed with uncertainty, a strange calm that appears even when nothing is resolved yet, a reduced emotional charge around things that once consumed you. Problems still exist, but they don't hook you the same way. You observe them rather than wrestle with them. This is not apathy, it is emotional reorganization. Your system is withdrawing energy from the old future you were pushing toward and redirecting it towards something not yet fully visible. That redirection feels like loss before it feels like gain. It feels like standing still while something internal is moving at tremendous speed. This is why so many people turn back at this point. They try to reignite urgency. They recreate stress just to feel familiar momentum again. But that only delays the shift. The emotional signal is asking for trust, not action. The discomfort you feel is not a warning sign. It is the body adjusting to a new baseline. The old emotional fuel has burned out. The new one hasn't fully stabilized yet, and in that space, something extraordinary is preparing to emerge. The final paradox. Everything you have been taught suggests that progress requires motion. That change comes from effort layered on effort. That if something hasn't arrived yet, the answer must be more focus, more discipline, more force. But at this stage, those rules no longer apply. The system you are entering operates on a different logic entirely. This is the paradox. The final movement is not forward, it is inward, And then, strangely, it is still. For a long time, striving served a purpose. It built coherence, it trained your attention, it stripped away illusions through friction. But striving carries an energetic signature. It quietly says, "This is not here yet." And when the internal alignment is complete, that signal becomes interference rather than fuel. What is required now is not effort but release. This does not mean giving up. It means letting go of the subtle tension that believes something must still be earned. The final alignment happens when the nervous system exits pursuit mode and enters recognition. When the body stops leaning forward into the future and settles fully into the present moment. Radical acceptance is not passive, it is precise. It is the moment you stop trying to convince reality and allow reality to reorganize around what is already true internally. The mind resists this because it feels like loss of control. The identity built on effort fears disappearance. But what dissolves here is not you. It is the version of you that needed resistance to feel alive. This is why the shift often arrives during stillness, during pauses, during moments when nothing seems to be happening. The system is completing itself without your interference. Imagine a lock that has already aligned every internal pin. Any additional pressure now jams it. The door opens not by force, but by ease, by allowing the mechanism to do what it was designed to do. This is the point where seeking becomes noise, where effort becomes static, where doing gives way to being. The paradox is that the moment you stop reaching for the next state, you become available to receive it. Not as a reward, but as a reflection. The world does not change because you asked harder. It changes because there is no longer resistance to what is already aligned. And once this release occurs, the shift is no longer optional. It completes itself. Integration and no return. What follows the shift is rarely dramatic. There is no explosion, no sudden transformation that announces itself to the world. Integration is quieter than expectation. It unfolds not as an event, but as a change in orientation. You wake up one day and realize you're no longer asking the same questions. The urgency that once drove you is dissolved, replaced by a calm certainty that does not need explanation. This is how you know there is no return. You're no longer oriented toward becoming. You're oriented toward being. Decisions begin to arise from clarity instead of pressure. You say no without guilt. You move without second guessing. Situations that once demanded emotional labor simply fall away, not because you rejected them, but because they no longer recognize you. Integration is the nervous system learning to live without friction. At first, this can feel disorienting. The absence of struggle may feel unfamiliar, even suspicious. You might expect the old anxiety to return, the old need to prove, to fix, to strive. But it doesn't come back in the same way. When echoes appear, they feel distant, like remnants from another lifetime rather than threats to your present. This is the moment most people underestimate. They think the work is over because the tension is gone. In truth, the work has changed form. Integration is not about holding the state. It is about allowing it to permeate everything. Your conversations, your pace, your sense of time, your relationship to uncertainty. You begin to notice that life responds differently now. Not faster in a frantic way, but smoother. Less resistance, fewer detours. What once required effort now unfold through timing. Synchronicities appear, not as signs to chase, but as confirmations that you are already aligned. And slowly a deeper realization settles in. You didn't cross into a new life. You crossed into a new position within it. You're no longer waiting at the edge, scanning the horizon for permission. You're standing inside the field you were trying to reach. The identity that once strained toward the future has completed its role. From here, movement is natural, choice is clean, and the path ahead does not need to be forced because it is already open. This is the point of no return, not because you cannot go back, but because there is nothing back there that belongs to you anymore.